science is still evolving while we're still evolving. Do you ever think that it will reach a point where science stops evolving? And how do we know if it is still evolving, how do we know what to believe and what not to believe?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So science is a way of knowing, and it's a relatively recent way of knowing. What we call the scientific method, Jay, it appeared about 300 years ago during the time of Isaac Newton, when he formulated the laws of physics, is when we say the scientific method began. Now, other people argue and say, there were scientific approaches that were done in the time of the Greeks and the Romans, and it's true, but it was formalized and structure was given to the scientific method. Science is designed to be constantly updated. It is not a static story. And this, I think, is where the mistake has been made, because we live in a world right now. There's a battle playing out, multiple battles. There's a battle for our thoughts. And you can see that playing out in mainstream media across every nation. It's not just America or just Australia or just Europe or Africa or China. There's a battle for our thoughts. We all know that. There's a battle for our story, the way that we've been taught to think about ourselves. And the stakes have never been higher, because the way that we think about ourselves determines the policies that we embrace, the laws that we agree to live and abide under. Those are all based upon our story. So all of a sudden, you see the battle for our story is front and center. I mean, what could be more important than that right now? So when we talk about that battle, there's a battle for who we are and the way that we think about ourselves. Academia is trying to hang on to what's called the standard model. There's a standard model for the creation of the universe and the creation of humans. We call that the Big Bang, and we call it evolution. The science no longer supports that story, and this is where science is stuck right now. So we ask science to tell us who we are. Science is doing a really good job. And there are scientists that don't like the answers. So there's an attempt being made now to cherry pick the answers. And part of that is that science has been hijacked by corporations. They will cherry pick the information that supports their agenda, and they'll leave the rest behind. Science has been hijacked by corporations, by politics. This certainly is true with the climate change agenda and the climate change conversation. By religion. Science has been hijacked by religion. Science has been hijacked by academia. And there are universities. I'm of the age right now where I have colleagues who have been teaching, they're professors at big universities in Europe and America. They've been teaching 40 to 50 years is how long they've been teaching. And I asked them, why can't you share with your students the new discoveries, the DNA discoveries that overturn the story of evolution as we've come to know it? And what they say to me, they said, Gregg, first of all, they say, if I were to teach the new discoveries, it would invalidate my 40 or 50 year career as a professor. And I said, no, it would not. It would actually show your students how relevant science is, because science is made to be constantly updated with new discoveries. It's not static. You cannot teach your students the story you learned in the 1950s, because new discovery, the technology has given us the ability to look into DNA in a way that we couldn't do in the 50s and 60s, to look into the cosmos with telescopes. We couldn't do that in the 50s and 60s. So the science, in large part, and it's very common right now, science has been hijacked, corporations, politics, religion, and academia. So there is a battle going on right now for our story, for our thoughts, for our beliefs, for our story. There's actually, it goes even deeper, and I don't know how deep we can go into this. There's a battle for our very humanness that's playing out, and most people don't even know about it. There is a thinking and an agenda that's being perpetrated that says that humans are frail, weak, powerless, temporary. and that we need something outside of our bodies, computer chips to replace our neurons, chemicals in our blood, wires under our skin, and to perpetuate our species. But what they fail to say is that all of that external technology mimics what we already do in the cells of our body, except our bodies do it better.
Yeah.
All of the networking is based upon neural networks that we already do, and we do so much better. In the interest of time, I'm beating around the bush. I'm just going to say it. The average human is about 50 trillion cells, give or take. Every one of those cells, 0.07 volts of electrical potential is in every one of those cells. Small potential, but you take 50 trillion times that 0.07 and it's over 350 trillion volts of electrical potential. That's a lot. Every cell in the body functions as a resistor, as a transistor, as a capacitor. Every cell in the body emits photons of light. It receives photons of light. That's information. Every cell in the body, on the external part of the cells, we have receptors that are like antenna receiving information. The genes in our DNA pick up certain wavelengths of light. They are antenna receiving information. And we self-regulate all of this soft technology through our thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, breath, and focus. And that is the core of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. And this is what we're coming to terms with now, because there is a movement called the transhuman movement that is telling us that our bodies need to be replaced with machines. Here's the problem, and then I'll stop. The problem with that is once we begin to replace our soft technology, our natural neurons, and the membranes that allow cell potential, ion potentials across the cells, or our crystalline structure of our bones. Once we begin to replace that in one generation, it's the use it or lose it analogy. Pretty soon, the next generation, they lose access to those neurons. They lose access to those capabilities. And the point, and the whole point of the work that I'm doing right now is I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good, or bad. The question is, how much of ourselves do we want to give away to technology? And how can we answer that until we know who we are? And that's the whole point. We are just beginning to understand what it means to be human and the full extent of what our extraordinary potentials are to self-regulate our biology. COVID-19 has brought this front and center with our immune response. That's another conversation, but I'm saying it's up for us all right now. So all of this comes into play when we begin talking about the battle for our story and the role of science. We've got to keep science honest if science is going to serve us. And I think that is of monumental importance right now. Potentials are to self-regulate our biology. COVID-19 has brought this front and center with our immune response. That's another conversation, but I'm saying it's up for us all right now.